As we dig into our Falcons preview here, just a quick heads up, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love if you liked and subscribed to the channel. Please let us know your thoughts below, what you think the Falcons are going to be this year, where you think this stuff is right, where you think it's wrong. We would sincerely appreciate that. Let's get to the Falcons offseason in 60 seconds. Hired Jeff Ulbrich as their defensive coordinator, extended Jake Matthews 2 years, $45 million, $38 million guaranteed, signed Leonard Floyd 1 year, $10 million, retained Mike Hughes, the cornerback, 3 years, $16 million, $9.5 guaranteed, lost Drew Dahlman and Grady Jarrett to the Bears in free agency. Notable draft picks, Jalen Walker in the first round, edge rusher James Pierce in the first round as well, traded up, including a 2026 first round pick to get James Pierce, Xavier Watts, the safety in the third round, Billy Bowman, who is in the nickel mix for this team in the fourth round out of Oklahoma. Derrik, what are you excited to watch with the 2025 Atlanta Falcons?
Regardless of whatever, we don't know the quality of play we're going to get from the quarterback yet, but I do know he's going to throw the piss out of the ball and he's going to throw it far down the field. And they have one of my favorite receivers for that. And we already have proof of concept that Michael Penix loves Drake London. This is something that I think a lot of people have already pointed out, but like when you look at the numbers for what Drake London was doing when in the 3 games that Michael Penix played, Drake London led the NFL in targets, in yards, and first downs in the final 3 weeks of the season. He had a 39.4% target share, which was the highest in the NFL over that span, but also if you had like run that out for the entire season, would have also been first just over Puka Nacua, who was at like 38.5%. So this was already a team that fed Drake London a lot, as they should have, and Kirk Cousins was doing that. But now they have a quarterback who, and I think we said this when they drafted Michael Penix, who is the receiver on the Falcons who most resembles what Rome Odunze was in college? It's Drake London. And we knew that Michael Penix would throw the hell out of the ball to Rome Odunze because he's just going to go find the ball. And London obviously gives them to that. So I'm just very excited to see what the basketball offense kind of looks like for those two.
I will say, one bit of context, Darnell Mooney was hurt for one of those games where Drake London got like 19 targets. So that's just one thing to keep in mind as you consider what might be driving some of that. But absolutely, this thing is going to be built through Drake London. Like, we know that. He's going to get a shitload of work within this offense. And I'm right with you here. Like, we talked about this on our Half Baked Take show earlier this year. Like, I'm pumped about what this offense could potentially look like with Michael Penix. If you look at just some of the underlying numbers for Michael Penix last year, he had a 9% big-time throw rate in his 3 starts, according to PFF. That would have led the league. Josh Allen was at 7% for all of last season in his MVP season. You combine that, and we know it. I mean, I could throw out like 10 incredible throws he had in those 3 games. Like, he has unbelievable, like, staggering arm talent. You combine that with just not having negative plays. There are accuracy issues, but the true, like, huge downside negative plays. He had a 1.7% turnover-worthy play rate over that same stretch. That would have been tied for the league lead. So you would have been tied for the league lead in big-time throw rate and turnover-worthy throw rate. And he had a 12.1% pressure to sack rate in those 3 starts. That would have been behind only Lamar Jackson last year.
Wow.
So when you combine like the high-end stuff with the lack of low-end stuff, that's how I can start getting excited about what he can be within an offense that I think has the requisite amount of talent and I think is designed in a way that can get me pretty pumped.
So I understand I'm the Michael Penix skeptic here, but like how much of the numbers like that should we be doing with like 100 pass attempts against 3 of the worst pass defenses in the entire NFL? Like it just feels
fair.
Like very fraught to me.
I completely understand that. I think from a process perspective, though, the sack taking, I think, is just a part of who he is as a quarterback. So I think that to me is something I will believe in. And I think the aggressiveness and the arm talent, it's undeniable. Like, I think he will play this way with this style, and those throws are available to him. I'll say this, and I don't want to read too much into the conversations I have at these places and the tones of those conversations. When you go to some of these teams and you're talking about the players and even the quarterback, there are teams that are realistic, right? Like, they want the guy to be good, but there's, we're not exactly sure how this guy is going to be. When you talk to people in the Falcons building, people on that offensive staff, they are true believers. Like, in their minds, this is a special guy who is going to be a special player. just some of the elements of what he's doing at training camp and how he's moving people with his eyes and just the awareness that he plays with, him getting to certain checkdowns, like the process within the offense. You combine that with the talent, and they're just like fully bought in to him being one of those quarterbacks. Like Matthew Stafford's name comes out of their mouth over and over and over again when they talk about this guy. And I don't know if we're ultimately going to get there, but I can tell you that's the level of excitement that exists within that building.
We obviously can't say that he's going to get there, but I disagree for the record, just because I've seen even first round picks. I've seen way too many guys get thrown in and just not look ready for it. And Michael Penix looked so ready. And like, what was the story? He found out while he was at Costco on like a Tuesday night that it wasn't going to be Kirk anymore. And by Sunday, he didn't look overwhelmed. That's for sure. It was very, very impressive. And it registered for me on a level beyond like, oh, well, this, it's a good, favorable situation. No, I thought it was much more than that. Michael Penix was he was an end credit scene to a Marvel movie where like the season's winding down, like the movie's over.
It's a generous way to explain the Falcons.
And then it's like a new Avenger is coming in 2026. Like, hang on for the new guy. That's how I felt about Michael Penix.
I completely understand the accuracy worries. There were sprays last year that were tough to support, right? It's tough to like talk those away. But I think some of the things they've worked on with him when it comes to his base and staying on top of the ball as a thrower, like these are all things that they're aware of. Even some of the touch issues that we've talked about, Derrik, like they're working on the right stuff. And I think that extends for me to some of the gaps in the offense. And when you look at what they were offensively last year, they were incredibly explosive when Penix got in there. But this is still a team that wasn't pulling levers to push the ball down the field. They had a bottom of the league play action rate with Kirk, and they continued to do that with Penix. But I think that's partially a product of changing quarterbacks midstream. Like I feel like a couple areas that I think they've really drilled down on this offseason are what sort of play action concepts down the field can we activate now with this guy as our quarterback so we can continually pump the ball downfield. And the other thing that it was good to hear was how can we be more explosive on the ground, right? They were incredibly efficient as a run team last year. I think they had the best rushing efficiency rate in the NFL per success rate, according to Next Gen. They were not an explosive running team. I want to say Bijan had like 4 or 5 runs of 30-plus yards. And one of the areas where you can seek out these explosives on the ground is by changing up and having complementary runs within your offense. This is a zone-based team in a way that not that many teams in the NFL are anymore. But I think this is the year where you're going to see them. What are the change-ups? What are the things that we can do to hunt out those explosives with a guy who has the talent to do it? We just haven't seen it happen before. So all the ways that they've thought about adding wrinkles and layers to who they're going to be this year based on the talent, which is pretty damn good to start with, I'm just encouraged by the vision for how they want this to go. Let's get to these swing points for the 2025 Falcons. Dave, why don't you kick us off here?
I deeply appreciate how easy the Falcons have made this on us. Like, you can dig into minutia if you want to, but I think that's being intellectually dishonest because there's two things. We already talked about Penix, and then on the defensive side, Terry Fontenot was just like, we're gearing up at edge rusher and we're doing it as recklessly as possible, in my opinion. For the record, I've said many times, I hated what they did in the draft. It just felt unnecessary to move that amount of capital around to get 2 edge rushers. But if it works, then you can really supercharge this thing if you're right. If you're right about Jalen Walker, if you're right about James Pierce Jr., Leonard Floyd on the defensive side of the ball was the main addition. And Leonard Floyd can definitely be an exciting piece of your pass rush, especially if one, preferably both of these rookies hit. And I'm sure the Falcons are imagining a Rams-like effect where Verse and Fisk just turned that thing into a level beyond what anybody saw coming. Are they going to be right to the degree that they're fine not having a first-round pick next year? I would like to see it to believe it, but if it happens, then I think it changes the complexion of this whole team, really.
My biggest struggle with all of this is that so I was a little bit iffy on what Jalen Walker could be coming into the NFL. I just didn't know if he was supposed to be an edge player. Do you make him like Frankie Louvu where he's a little bit of both? Like, do you make him off ball, whatever? The fact that they have purely sold him as an edge player is, to me, a little bit like, it just feels like there would have been, you drafted a player like that to do a lot with him. And if they really think that he can just purely be a special edge player, that's fine. He definitely has the length, the violence, the speed to do it. It's just, it feels like, especially in year one, we're asking a lot of a player like that.
I think it's the opposite. I think they're seeing it the opposite way, where in year one, they just want to keep the scope as limited as they can. So he's working on the stuff that he needs the most work on. Like when they're talking about him as an edge rusher and what he needs to develop, we see that all the time, though. I mean, I think there are a lot of defensive coaches who, when they're talking about young players, let's keep it as simple and as narrow as we can early in their career, and then maybe we start expanding it. This team feels good about their off-ball linebacker group. Like, they're excited about Caden Ellis. They think that Divine Diablo fits what they want to be. They need edge help. You look at the numbers last year, they had a 32.4% pressure rate when bringing 5.
Caden Ellis is amazing at that specifically.
That was less than 7 teams bringing 4. It was 31st in the NFL. They had fewer than a third of the dropbacks where they blitzed last year. They got pressure. This team needs pass rushers. And so just allowing him to be a terror off the edge in year one and allowing him to just focus on that, I can understand it. If you want to start expanding that and using him as more of a Swiss Army knife as he gets a little bit deeper into his career, fine. But right now, just saying, I want you to go get the quarterback on 3rd and 7, that's what this team needs more than anything else.
And you know what? To be generous to them, having said that I don't love what they did, if it works, like I found myself kind of nodding my head at what the Falcons have if we just assume that the rookies hit, or at least if Jalen Walker hits. Like, I went back and watched Arnold Ebiketie last night. I just went and watched highlights of his play, and I was like, if this guy was your 3rd best pass rusher, I'd feel a hell of a lot better about that. Like, he's got good bend, and he's just got a high motor. Like, a lot of his sacks are just pure effort plays. And if that's your 3rd guy, I like that. And if they're really right, if both of these rookies are something, then he's your 4th guy. Like, if you can really count on Pierce and Walker, and Ebiketie and Leonard Floyd are 3 and 4, or whatever order you want to put it, it doesn't really matter. Like, if all of those guys are humming, that's pretty fun. I'm dubious about it actually being that clean. I understand the vision, I guess. I understand where it could go. I need to see proof of concept before I get too excited about it.
I'll be clear. I'm probably being blinded by selfishness that I just kind of want to see Jalen Walker do all the other stuff. But you make a good point, Robert, that like for the interest of the team in year one, when these guys are kind of trying to save their jobs, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to ask him to do 800 things.
2 things I want to be clear about. 1, I do not support the James Pierce decision in any way, shape, or form.
Insane.
Trading a future 1st-round pick for James Pierce is not okay. And I think it's another misstep in process and with a regime that we've seen make plenty of them over the last few years. The Jalen Walker part, I think one reason just to kind of tamp down any excitement about this, he's been banged up for a huge portion of training camp. And as somebody that was kind of changing positions coming into the league, they were really encouraged and optimistic about what his development timeline was going to look like just based on how he's wired. Like the thought was something, that refinement that we're talking about as a pass rusher, that might take some guys a long time because they have a way to go. It wasn't going to take him as long because of what he's like as a person. Just a son of a coach, all that stuff. They were very encouraged by that. He's missed over half of their padded practices. So now the guy that you drafted in the top half of the 1st round that you thought was going to be the dude to supercharge your pass rush has missed a huge chunk of training camp. And James Pierce, while a productive pass rusher in college, I think there was a reason that there were some doubts about what he was going to be in the NFL. So this is another one of those scenarios, Dave, where investments don't necessarily equal results. And if they don't, then we might be in a tough spot with this Falcons defense.
That's what I'm saying is it's easy to sit there and be like, well, the Rams just did this. And I'm here to say that's a rare thing. Like we shouldn't accept.
I couldn't think of 2 more different players than Jared Verse and James Pierce.
James Pierce.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even talking about player types, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's completely fair, but just the idea that you're like, yeah, we're going to spend back-to-back picks on this and they're both highly ranked and they're going to change the whole thing overnight. I don't think it's realistic. And you're 100% right. I mean, Jared Verse is a much more complete player than either one of these guys, in my opinion, at least. And so it's theoretically possible. I can just I'm couching my words because I can imagine this rant being on a Falcons hype video in December when these guys are in the Rookie of the Year chase. I mean, it's theoretically possible, but it's tough for me to believe that it works out that beautifully. And Derrik made a point worth mentioning is I think Terry Fontenot needs to show something here if we're going to keep going with this regime, right? Like, this is year 5, and if they don't have a playoff appearance to put behind it, now you're talking about bringing in a new regime that doesn't have a first-round pick if this doesn't go the way you want it to. And that, to be clear, that won't be Terry Fontenot's problem, and that's probably why he did it, or at least part of it, but it makes me nervous. It makes me nervous. I'd rather have Jalen Walker and a second-round pick and know that I can keep that powder dry for next year. But if it works, then more power to them, and they can gloat all they want.
Let's talk about what's worrying us here. You said you're worried about that. Here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the fragility of the offense. That's what's keeping me up at night. We have questions about the defense, but I do think the offense is more fragile than we want to believe it is after the flashes we saw from them at the end of last season. Darnell Mooney, who I think stylistically is a fantastic fit with Michael Penix. Like, what Darnell Mooney does on some of those outbreaking vertical routes, he is exactly what you want as like a secondary complementary piece with Michael Penix. He's hurt. They don't know. He's hopefully going to be back early in the season, but he's missed the majority of training camp. And now Kaleb McGary gets carted off earlier this week. We don't know how much time he's going to miss. Their starting right tackle. Their swing tackle, Storm Norton, is also hurt and I think is out for the entire season. And why this matters is that, going back to the Terry Fontenot point, Dave, this team added no offensive players this offseason. None. And this is, to me, the mark of a short-sighted front office. This is where you see teams make mistakes, where they think, okay, all we need to do is fix the problem that was bad for us last year. And as long as we do that, everything else is going to be great. And that's just not how any of this works. And so the fact that they built in no redundancies for the offense because they were converting so many resources to the defense puts you in a spot where, as a team that played 86% 11 personnel last year and only has 3 receivers, if one of those receivers gets hurt and now your offensive line that was shockingly healthy last year except for the center that is no longer here and his backup is now playing, if you miss half the season from one of those guys, you start to chip away at the best version of this offense very, very quickly.
And to the point of like short-sighted team building, think about the team we just talked about, Jason Light and what he did with the Bucs. They were
the perfect comparison.
They were like the 5th best offense in the league and said, you know what? We want to get a year ahead of the receiver thing, and we're going to go draft Emeka Egbuka. And the Falcons continually do the exact opposite of that. And that is why there's a number of reasons I feel a little bit icky about this team, but that is certainly one of them. And then again, the Kaleb McGary, Storm Norton thing, when you lose both of your potential right tackles for any team, that's a huge deal. And I know that Michael Penix is better about getting the ball out than most other quarterbacks, but this is his blind side for a guy who is like, it's his blind side for a guy who is going to first time be like a full-time starting quarterback. That's just, again, even if we think he's good at getting the ball out, you're just going to get hit more than you would probably like. And that's a little bit scary to me.
And he's a pocket-based quarterback. Like, that's who
he's not going to move.
He's not going to mitigate. He's not going to deal with like unblocked pressure in a way that some of these other young quarterbacks are. Stylistically, he needs to be kept clean to be the guy that we want him to be. And now you're going into the season with a massive question mark at one of your tackle spots.
On top of what it obviously means for Michael Penix Jr., are y'all aware Bijan Robinson took like his carry count, his carry splits, 73.8% of his attempts went outside the tackles. That's like among guys that had a lot of carries, that is in a different stratosphere. Like
the outside zone offense.
Alvin Kamara and Devon Achane are the only guys that even come close to how often he was doing it. And per NFL Jesus, they were so much better doing it off of right tackle than left. Like, by a lot. Like, they were averaging 4.5, 5 yards per carry going off the right side. So if your right tackle and your swing tackle are down, that's very scary for both components of your offense. Yeah, very fittingly, I was doing my notes for the Falcons when the Kaleb McGary injury happened. And I was like, well, I know the answer to what's keeping me up at night. It's that. That's very easy.
The last thing before we transition to some of the defensive talk here that I did not mention when discussing like the structure of the offense. One of my predictions for this team is they lead the league in pistol snaps, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because I do think it's a way to combine your quarterback being comfortable in the shotgun. And I think that there are certain things they can activate from a play action pass perspective there. And there are actually elements of their run game that they think work better from the pistol than they do from under center or the gun. So this team leading the league in that and having it be kind of the foundation of their offense in a way that it isn't with a lot of other teams, just something to keep an eye on as we get into the season. What else we're watching over the first month of the season, Derrik? What are you watching for the first 4 weeks with the Atlanta Falcons?
In terms of, draft picks, the 2 first-round pass rushers are the big one, but they also spent 2 picks in the secondary. And this is a secondary that was very bad last year and didn't really add or retain that many veteran players. Obviously, they brought back Mike Hughes, but I don't think he should be prohibitive to anything, insane going on there. So they drafted safety Xavier Watts in the 3rd round, who I actually liked a little bit coming out of the draft, and maybe he can be a player for them. And then Billy Bowman out of Oklahoma to potentially play the nickel for them. They need one of them to be good. This is not we hope this works out for us and this can change things for us a little bit. No, they need one of these players to be at least a C+ level starter. And if they don't, I think this defense is just going to get fried again. It's going to be AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates just holding on for their lives.
Yeah, that other outside cornerback spot, Mike Hughes got that contract of we can live with this, but we probably want to upgrade. It's the exact type of contract Mike Hughes got. It's the same one Mike Jackson got, which we're going to talk about in a second with Carolina. I think Billy Bowman is not necessarily a guarantee to crack the starting lineup solely because D. Alford is a solid player. Mm-hmm. I think that's the reason that Billy Bowman might not start. If Xavier Watts doesn't start and doesn't have an impact, that's a concern. And I think it's probably trending in that direction. I would be surprised if we look at this at the end of the season and Jesse Bates and Xavier Watts aren't the 2 Falcon safeties that got the most snaps. What I'm watching over the first month of the season, let's stick with the defense. What does this defense look like with Jeff Ulbrich as the defensive coordinator? I mean, this group, it was one of the biggest questions I had when he got hired. The last couple of regimes they've had with Dean Pease and Ryan Nielsen and then into Jimmy Lake, I mean, this was a odd front 3-4 type team that is playing a very different sort of style of defense than what Jeff Ulbrich did when he was with the Jets. And so where do they fall between those 2 systems with the personnel that they have? And I do think that Jeff Ulbrich said something really interesting when he got hired. And it was just that he kind of had an awakening about how you should be playing defensive football. And I think he's been a lot more open-minded than some of the stylistic choices the Jets would make would lead you to believe. The Jets were a 4-down attack front. That's what they had been all the time when Jeff Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator. I would not be surprised if you saw a little bit of a blend of some of that 4-down stuff with some of the more odd front stuff that this team has done in the past. Partially because of the personnel, but partially because front diversification is a way to kind of keep offenses a little bit off balance compared to what they were doing with the Jets, where you're just getting teed off on over and over and over again. And you can do that when you have really, really good players who are fluent in that system. There is none of that here. I do think that some of the younger players they have can take to this attacking style because they're not used to playing any other way. But I would not be surprised if there was a little bit more of a difference between how those guys played. And then on the back end, this is just very different stylistically from what the Falcons were doing a year ago. The number that jumped out to me, Atlanta's corners last year played off coverage 71% of the time, which was the highest rate in the league. They had the 3rd most average cushion of any quarterback group in the NFL per next gen. The Jets were bottom 10. This team is going to play a lot more man. They're going to be a lot more aggressive. And I'm just curious how all of that shakes out when you combine the differences up front and the differences on the back end and whether or not this is a good thing for the Falcons moving forward.
The front is the hardest part of it for me to figure out. AJ Terrell taking to more man coverage, he's a pretty good player.
That'll happen.
That's going to be fine. He's really good. And Jesse Bates doing whatever he's going to do. If he gets to be maybe in a man coverage world a little bit more of a freelancer at times, I think that could obviously work out for them. It's the front to me. And it's not just that they have all these different body types and stuff like that and maybe different marriages, but all of the guys that they drafted last year, we have no idea if they're any good. Rook Aurora, we have no idea if he's anything. Brandon Dorlus, we have no idea if he's anything. Braylon Trice, I believe, missed all of last year. I liked him as a prospect, but if he's a guy who's coming off injury, was kind of drafted for the last system, is really more of a bigger run defender, what is his role in all of this going to be? So it's just a lot of they are more than most other units. Like, I truly don't know what to think until we get to October.
And we talk about the edge rushers. Which of those interior guys hit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they need one or two of those guys to turn into players. Like they need Dorless, Arukaroro, some of those guys to be impactful for this to all come together. It can't just be one or two of the young edge players, because if they combine that with like zero push up front, David Onyemata is getting deeper into his 30s. Like they've spent so many resources on the interior defensive line specifically. They need one or two of those guys to be significant contributors for this to all work. Let's get into what a successful season looks like for the 2025 Falcons. Dave, what do you got for me?
This is where I'll be the NFC South apologist, because I think we need to see playoff success. We need to see them in the playoffs. We need to see Terry Fontenot's vision come to fruition in some way. I don't necessarily think they need to win the division, and that's just because if Michael Penix is good, then this could be a wild card team. We were talking about this in the pre-production meeting. I think people get so locked into their ideas of what a division is, where it's like, okay, this is going to be the 4 seed, and they're gonna they're gonna have a wild card game, and they'll probably lose it, which is ironic because the Bucs weren't even the 4 seed last year. But that's how people view this division. And I think if Michael Penix is good, there's no reason that the Bucs and Falcons can't both make the playoffs. Like they could both be, 111 win, 110 win team and sneak in there. And so I need the Falcons in the playoffs. It would be more fun for them if they finally took the division from Tampa. But as long as they get there, I don't care. If it's another year without the postseason, then I think that's very dicey for Terry Fontenot.
I think more than most other teams, they have to make the playoffs. Like, I think for a lot of other teams, it can be like in this like general range, it would be like, okay, it would be nice. We got young quarterback. As long as he looks good, we'll be fine. There's too many other good skill players on this team for that to be the case. Like you kind of have to get 10 wins and in.
It's such a strange marriage of timelines because you have a second-year quarterback and you need to make the playoffs. And that's just the nature of what this has looked like and how they've built over the last couple of years. It's a team that signed Kirk Cousins in free agency last year. Like their timeline is much stranger than any of the other teams that have second-year quarterbacks.
Real quick, that's a funny point that I was thinking about when you were talking about Jeff Ulbrich, because you're like, well, some of these guys from previous years don't fit the scheme. That's a weird thing to say when the GM is the same. Like, Terry Fontenot brought these guys in, and now they might not fit what the new DC wants to do. That's what happens when the GM survives a coaching change.
I don't necessarily think there are that many guys who aren't fit for this system. Like Arnold Ebiketie, body type-wise, is probably the only one. Like if you look at the other guys, they're just big, strong, athletic defensive linemen. There are no players, in talking to the defensive staff there, where they're like, he's kind of a weird square peg round hole guy for what we're trying to do. There is none of that. And so I do think they think there can be a smooth transition, in part because I don't think there will be a wholesale transition from what they were doing last year to what the Jets were doing. I don't think that's what you're going to see.
Well, that's probably good process on their part then, which, yeah, but I just think you're in an interesting situation where the GM survives coaching turnover as well as major quarterback decisions, which are both things that Terry Fontenot has done in the last year or two.
I'm with you guys. I think they have to make the playoffs for this to be a success. And I also think Michael Penix carrying over the good elements of what we saw last year, even if, turned down a tiny bit. I don't think he has to lead the league in like the amount of explosive passes this team has. But if Michael Penix and the decision-making, the arm talent, all the things that flashed last year carry over, and some of those things that were a little bit more volatile, Derrik, we've talked about them, like the lack of touch, some of the sprays, that can get cleaned up. I do think that version of him plus a playoff win, that is success for this team that took that quarterback 8th overall last year.
Yeah, if he looks like the whole weird taking him at 8th overall when we already have a quarterback thing is no longer a thing that anyone thinks about, that's clearly success.
It's a great way to frame it. Thanks for watching The Athletic Football Show. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with us. Like and comment on this video, and we'll see you next time.